Welcome to Numeracy and the Outdoors. This is areas of learning and experience. I'm using Prezi Video, really good. You may want to think about using it for some of your future modules. What I've done here, as you can see, I've uploaded my PowerPoint and then I can obviously talk to you like a weatherman. It's really good. Okay, so we start off with why take children into the outdoors to develop numeracy skills. I'm sure you've got loads of ideas, but here are a few. So I don't know if you can read that there, but this is from the Welsh Government. The Welsh Government obviously are saying outdoors is an ideal environment for experiential learning. It provides unique opportunities for children to be creative, to take risks, to be noisy. Provides opportunities that children can't do outside. The outdoors is full of special stimuli such as weather, sounds, smells, textures that it can enrich and enhance a children's learning environment, especially within maths. Okay, there's some other reasons why, which we're going to investigate in this lecture. But I think the thing, a lot of people when they think about outdoor maths is just go into a forest school, and outdoor anything has to be done by a trained forest school practitioner, and that's not the case. You know, outdoor maths could be done anywhere. As you can see these pictures, some on the beach, it could be just on the playground, it could be actually doing the classic, you probably all remember, doing the traffic survey. Again, a great data collection example. It could be here, a maths treasure hunt. I've got on the link, and this will be all on Moodle, but a huge reason why people are teaching outdoors is because of COVID. Children can't stay indoors. Obviously during lockdowns, when we had that period in between the lockdowns when we had to provide an educational provision, but not indoors. So a number of schools have been forced into doing more teaching in the outdoors, not just maths, across a range of areas of learning and experience. So that has had a huge impact as well. Okay, so as Koshi suggests here, sorry, I'm going between two screens. Youngsters need to develop curiosity, creativity, fluency within maths, a change of environment, and children are not aware they're doing maths. So in the outdoors, a really good benefit is that children will be doing quite high level abstract mathematical work, but a lot of the time, because they're outside, it's almost by stealth that they feel they're not actually doing maths. Okay, so in terms of the role of the outdoors, so the outdoors may support mathematical development in the following ways. So as Pratt says here, stimulation. So, you know, children might actually be motivated. They might not like maths, as we saw in the first lecture. You might be able to empathise with that. But the ability to touch, manipulate, and actually be involved in math rather than just the teacher being at the front of the class and talking to the children. It may provide opportunities for pupils to find mathematical solutions, might offer a different perspective to maths that are being explored. Again, it's quite hard if you're a child trying to learn through a textbook. If you're in the outdoors, it might give you a different perspective. It helps to engage everyday situations that children might need that different perspective towards the world. Now, this isn't to say that maths is the key, and you know, if children are struggling, get them outdoors and they're going to change everything. That's definitely not, and that's what Pratt suggests here. So actually, taking children outside can be a bit of a danger to learning. So it can be an overstimulus to some learners. It might well distract learners. It might be that they it might completely confuse them when you take them outside. And there is that over abstraction. And as you can see here, although it can offer a different perspective, it can be quite confusing for them. So this isn't to say that taking children outside is the silver bullet. Obviously, you're going to need to know your learners. You're going to need to know and understand what they know and see how you can build on that. but there are a lot of benefits that can be taken from going in the outdoors. So again, as Pratt suggests, the curriculum does not always illustrate the ways pupils learn. Indeed, there's a good argument to say that it can inhibit learning by focusing too strongly on particular ideas and not on the way they can relate to each other. So actually, if you go outside, they have a lot more freedom. There isn't this restrictive way of learning. And with this freedom, they might be able to learn a bit better. Sorry, I'm just getting used to the controls. Yeah. Okay. Really important as well, I think, as Pratt introduces here, learning is all too easily appropriated by adults, so that it always becomes mediated through adults' cultural position. So usually, the teacher at the front of the class will be explaining the maths concepts to children, how they understand it, and they've had a good few years on these children. So what is really obvious to them isn't so obvious to the child who hasn't had these experiences yet. So Pratt suggests by taking it outdoors, children can start to interpret these ideas and test ideas when they're in the outdoors. They can get messy, they have the freedom, as I've said, to sort of test ideas rather than just in the indoors and following an adult's way of learning. Okay. So as we've looked at in the first few lectures, there's considerable evidence that the best way to learn maths is to engage them regularly in the activity that is maths. So as we've talked about, bringing to the boil, getting them to do little and often, get them to do short, sharp activities where they're having to constantly use their math skills. So, as Pratt says here, pupils should come to know maths as a particular form of activity rather than just a body of knowledge that needs to be learned. So it's not something that should just be ticked off, and you can see children holding their head in their hands as they're thinking, oh, I've got to do maths. It should be something that's really exciting. It should be something that becomes a part of their learning they want to do. So maths is actually a process of abstracting ideas and generalizing them. So an example that he offers is, when you want children to learn to count using their fingers in the foundation phase, when you want to abstract that idea so they're not stuck to using their fingers, they could potentially use sticks, they could use leaves. What this unlocks is the power of maths for pupils that allows them to work on more complex ideas. So you start with something like fingers, you start with something like sticks, but then these become representations of the physical world, and they will therefore be useful to pupils to make abstractions about the world which they're in. So by going outside, there are things that they can count. There are many different things that they can count that offer a definite alternative to what you'd be doing indoors. Okay, which brings us on to environments, mathematical environments. So being outdoors in the school playground, the garden, the playing field, children are able to make more noise, make more mess, they're able to work on a larger scale, and it offers that alternative and a greater potential for mathematical learning. As Pound and Lee say, that children are more likely to take opportunities to make mistakes, as we learned in the first lecture, can be really good and positive for learning. And they offer the examples of, weather offers a really good way to learn about maths. It could be, for example, as they've offered here, shadows and finding the height of a tree. The importance of these things for a creative approach to maths should not be underestimated. So going back to a point before, it's bringing the real world into focus, which is suggested by the Welsh curriculum, suggested in maths theory, that you should be able to bring the real world to mathematical teaching. Okay. Again, as I mentioned, maths outside so many times. I've gone into schools, I've helped, I've taught in schools myself, and staff have been nervous that they haven't had their forest school accreditation. I can't possibly go outside because I'm not forest school accredited, which is crazy. Maths or numeracy outside could be anywhere. It could be natural places such as beaches, forests, rivers, hills. but also it could be on school trips. So maths outdoors doesn't just have to be in a forest, which increasingly in literature, that's what you will read. Obviously, there's a brilliant, forest schools is absolutely brilliant, but I think it can be a barrier to many teachers if they haven't got that qualification, that they feel they're not trained enough to go outside to especially to teach maths. So maths doesn't just mean the woods. Nature, obviously, but also constructed building, other artifacts that they can use. It's about mathematical use. So trying to make maths fun to them in whichever way that it is. It could be in the street. I've worked in schools where the forest provision or the outdoor provision has not been that great. It's just been a lot of concrete and asphalt. But maybe we've gone, and this isn't to say we're playing in the streets, but you can use the neighbouring streets. In the valleys, we were counting number of houses, we were estimating how many houses would fit on the street, the garden, the seaside, whatever you have in your local vicinity, to use that. So it's not just restricted to going in the woods. And again, here, supporting ideas that I've already mentioned, really. If you're going on school trips, there's real opportunities for giving ownership to the children. Maybe they think about the timings, the costing, the timetables, coordinating transport. And we went on a school trip to Paris. I'll never get those years back. That was the most stressful trip ever. But we went to a foreign supermarket, and the children got to think about foreign exchange. They got to pay for items. They got to pay for their lunch. They had a budget they had to manage. It's making maths real, and it's really important. Okay. This gives us a good opportunity to think about associated learning theories. There's a lot of learning theories you're going to explore over the next 3 years, but these are two which I think stand out when you start to use maths in the outdoors. So to start with holistic learning. Holistic learning, this definitely ties in with the ideas that the curriculum for Wales is built on, which is brilliant, and I'm a huge advocate for, and I'm really passionate that this is actually coming through in Wales. But just for you, if you're unsure of what holistic learning is, it's a belief that education should be more than a production line of future workers. It's not just about employment. Education should be about the cultivation of physical, spiritual, psychological, moral and emotional components that make up a human being. It's not just about teaching children how to get into work. Holistic learning is seen as more of a process rather than just children jumping through hoops and a series of standardized tests. Traditional education takes learning as a series of discrete silos. So if you think about, when you're in school, you might have a maths lesson on its own, and then you'll have a science lesson on its own, and then you'll have an English lesson on its own. Whereas holistic learning looks to try and make connections between these. So holistic learning thinks about there's many routes to a learning outcome that entwines new knowledge, what's already known by the child, and then what's unique to the learner, thinking about what are they interested in. So it's trying to personalise the education to them. Holistic learning aims to foster an interest in learning. And to think about learning is a lifelong process, not just something that's done when you're a child. Now again, this isn't to say that you should follow this way, and holistic learning is something you should follow. This is just a theory, something that I believe passionately in, but you may not. And again, we can be critical about this as well. But learning outdoors is experiential. So participants learn through doing, unlike memorization or learning by rote or going through endless textbooks. The enhancement of existing knowledge by appending new knowledge, therefore deepening understanding or creating new awareness. So when you do go outside, there's a multimodal approach. So, children can touch, feel, hear things. I mean, you could still do that in the indoors, but it tends to be more stimulating and it offers a greater variety of multimodality, I would argue. So this can facilitate mental models which can be created in the mind of the learner. So in turn, this can form the basis of which they can then make mental connections, as I mentioned. So, one of the fundamental theories of the new Welsh curriculum is these areas of learning and experience and cross-curricular learning. So you're not learning in silos, you are trying to make connections. You're thinking about what you already know, and then you're thinking about how these connect, how these ideas connect. This connects also to another theory, so social development theory. So you've probably heard of Big Lev or Lev Vygotsky. He's got there in 1962. He died before then, but he was from Russia, and obviously his works have been translated since then. So he's around in the 1930s. So Vygotsky believed that all humans use material tools to extend our physical achievements. But we've invented psychological tools to extend our mental capacity. These tools are developed within our social culture rather than being inherited by genetics and in the way that we communicate with our world. So, as Vygotsky says, learning is a social act. So it's something that we need to do socially, we need to do together. And the purpose of which is to introduce children to these cultural tools and to help them manage these tools and use them successfully. So Vygotsky was an advocate for learners playing an active role in learning rather than just a teacher at the front transmitting knowledge to pupils, which obviously this relates really well to going in the outdoors, where it doesn't tend to be a teacher transmitting knowledge. Children have the freedom to go off and to explore themselves. So Vygotsky believed that the progression in learning is a social phenomenon, where the pupils learn to exist within the confines of social norms, rituals, mimicry, collaboration and instruction, which is like real life. Learning shouldn't be restricted to individual activities, so sitting in a class, working through a textbook. And again, it sounds like I'm absolutely bashing here textbook use. I'm definitely not, and there's definitely a place for that, but there definitely is a place for a variety of ways to learn in the outdoors, whereas traditionally when we think about maths learning, it's done in isolation with a textbook, with a worksheet. I think there's definitely room, and there needs to be room for also taking this outside. So when you do that, learning shouldn't be restricted to individual activities, but performed within groups. You should be able to talk about the maths. You should be able to mimic, you should be able to collaborate, you should be able to bring your ideas. So, for example, if you were in the outdoors and you were trying to measure a tree and you had to reason how big it is, you couldn't climb to the top, and you were doing that in groups, you'd all bring your ideas to that group. So you're not just thinking about this on your own. Outdoor play is thought to have an impact on the physiological factors that underpin cognitive and social development. The stronger the evidence relates to motor and visual development by Fjortov. Okay. So just the final bit here on social development. So it's really important, especially in the foundation phase, that children have the opportunity to have these active social experiences, to go outdoors, to be creative, and the social and the outdoor environment definitely provides that. So they can go outside. If they've been learning about counting on the inside, they can go outside and maybe try and count some things. On the outside, there's so many things that they can do. There's unrestricted space. It allows for vocal discussion. There's not such an emphasis on writing things down. There's more an emphasis on oracy. And it helps them to extend their knowledge. It helps them to form new ideas and thinking. And this is really important in terms of acquiring early math skills and developing mathematical concepts. It's the ideal arena for children to voice their opinions, discuss problems, verbalise thoughts. And again, it sets them in a great habit. So rather than, I've talked about this before, but rather than thinking back to my maths lessons where I wasn't allowed to talk to anyone, I had to work on my own. It was silence through the maths lessons, and I just dread and hate them, and I even have a cold sweat thinking about them now. Actually, we should be able to discuss our problems. You should be able to verbalise thoughts. We should, especially within maths. It's a really complex area of learning, we should be able to argue, we should be able to test theory, we should be able to talk, we should have the freedom to explore it in a fun way. And I think traditionally that hasn't always happened. Okay, so in terms of the curriculum for Wales, we're going to have a quick dive into that now. In the curriculum for Wales, it says here that numeracy is really important, the application of maths to solve problems in the real world context. So actually, you could teach them the theory, you could teach them the ideas, and then they could test those ideas in the real world, outside, in a street, in a shop, in their local environment, in a forest, wherever. So just to show here, so if you're looking on maths and numeracy, so if you come onto the curriculum for Wales, the area of learning and experience of maths is here. It sets out, these are the key progression points for learners. So conceptual understanding, communication using symbols, fluency, logical reasoning, strategic competence. So this is all laid out. You can look at this in your own time. I'm sure you're aware of the what matters statement. So the what matters statements, these are applicable throughout the time that you're in school. So within maths and numeracy, within the curriculum, these are what matters and these what should be developed during the time at school. So the number system is used to represent and compare relationships between numbers and quantities. Algebra uses symbol systems to express the structure of mathematical relationships. Geometry focuses on relationships involving shape, space, position, and measurement on quantifying phenomena in the physical world. And then the final one is statistics, represent data, probability, models, chance, and both support the informed inferences and decisions. So they're what matters. And all of those can definitely be developed within the outdoors. So there's some principles here of progression. So that conceptual understanding, going in the outdoors provides that abstract. So rather than just providing indoor context, you can actually provide the abstract of going outdoors and trying these ideas in the outdoors as well to really deepen their understanding. Communication using symbols. Again, as we use that example of the fingers, of children using their fingers, they can use other things to count. They can use twigs, they can use acorns, whatever they want to use. There's that fluency, because there isn't such an importance on writing in the outdoors. It tends to be more oracy based. So children can actually talk about maths, and you could just go around as a teacher to record some of their conversations. Obviously, logical reasoning, there's a lot of reasoning when you're in the outdoors. You're having to vocalize your understanding. You can't write it down unless you maybe take out some whiteboards and whiteboard pens, but there tends to be a lot more oracy. And then again, that strategic competence. So learners should be increasingly independent in recognizing and applying and underlying their mathematical structures and ideas. Again, by going in the outdoors, it provides that different environment for them to do that. So there's obviously teaching maths in the indoors is really important, but as I've said, I think it's really important to provide an opportunity to learn in the outdoors as well, because then it gives them this better and deeper strategic competence. Just finally, on the descriptions of learning there, you've got the what matters statements. So if you've got a bit of time, have a look through the maths and numeracy. This is on Hub. This is on the curriculum for Wales, and try to bring some of these ideas into your blog. Okay, I've included here some resources, so you can look through. Again, you can reflect on these within your blog. There's a brilliant Natural Resources Wales. They've got some brilliant ideas and activities that you can develop. This one here, LTL, so Learning Landscapes. There's some brilliant free resources there. This is an older document. This is the Foundation Phase Outdoor Learning Handbook. There's some brilliant ideas in terms of risk assessment, why you should go outside, especially in the foundation phase in early years. And then this final one here is some ideas, some very basic ideas about why bring learning outside. here is my reference list. There's a few books there you could use within your blogs if you wanted to explore numeracy, especially numeracy in the outdoors. Thank you very much. I will see you soon.